basically in your seeking your passion of being a servant to the community led to you becoming the mayor? Is it pretty much where the dream stops, or maybe what's next for Mr. Simmons
Wait,
on that journey?
and it actually didn't lead me to becoming mayor because I was practicing law. I represented a lot of businesses, and then when I was living in New Orleans because when I got out of law school, I went clerk for a judge, Burnett Johnson. She wound up recently retiring as the first black chief justice of Louisiana Supreme Court, and then I was a partner in a big firm in New Orleans, but I was originally from Lake Charles, so my father had gotten sick, so I was coming back and forth. I was coming to Lake Charles, getting him. We were going to MD Anderson and going back, and then his cancer went in remission. Then when he came back, I was about to start my run again, and my wife, who told me if I ever tried to move to Lake Charles, she would leave me. She said if we left New Orleans right now and went to Lake Charles, what would we miss that we couldn't come back and visit? I almost fell out the bed. So I said nothing. So she said, why are we here? So the next day I had a big old partnership meeting, and I was telling the guys, look, I'm leaving. Who wants to buy my partnership share? And they were asking me, where you going? I said, I'm moving to Lake Charles. And we had just built a house in the Mandeville area. We had a young baby. We just had another baby. And they said, wait, don't you have a new house? I said, yeah. So don't you have a baby? I said, baby's 2 weeks old. So they said, you just going to start all over? I said, yeah, I did. And when I left out the room, they were literally on the floor laughing. But I wanted to come back, be with my father, because growing up, he worked at the plants. By the time we got up in the morning, he was gone. And after work, he'd, go out with his friends, have some drinks or whatever. So when he came back, it was dark. And so I never really knew him, although I knew him and admired him. So I came back and moved back here, and I got 20 more years with him before God called him home.
Oh,
Nice.
Yeah.
So, what moment or experience shaped the leader you are today?
Uh, Third grade. I had a third grade teacher named Miss Baptiste. She had left out the room. She came back in the room. Me and this kid, we had our rulers out. We were sword fighting, and she came in. She was so upset, and she told the kid that I was sword fighting. She said, "You sit down," and she told me, "You go in the hallway." And when I went in the hallway, I'm thinking, oh, I'm getting kicked out of school. And then she came in the hallway, and she just grabbed me by the shoulders, and she looked me right in my eyes. She said, "You have so much potential. You have so much potential." And at the time, I'm like, third grade, I'm like, okay, yeah, let's go back in the room. But then I looked at her, and a tear had welled up right in her eye right there. And it caught me. It affected me. And so I went back in the room, and it was just quiet the whole time. But it changed what I saw about myself. I never thought I was a kid with potential. I just was cutting up. But I remember when I got sworn into the bar, when I passed the bar, I came back home. There was a teacher named Miss Sellers that stayed two houses down from me. And when we were back home, I noticed that Miss Baptiste, they were friends, was at her house. So I went to her house, and I was telling Miss Sellers, hey, I just got sworn into the bar. I said, Miss Baptiste, you are my third grade teacher. I said, you will never know how much you changed my life. She said that day in the hallway. She remembered that.
Wow.
Yeah,
oh wow,
that was pretty cool, man. That.
that
That
is
is really cool.
amazing.
But if she would have kicked me out of school, no telling where I would have gone. If she wouldn't have even cared, she would just told me to go sit back in my seat. I'd have still been a little cut up. But man, some people can look at you and they almost peering into your soul or
Yeah.
into their soul. When she said you have so much potential, and that tear was in her eyes, that really it caught my attention.
So what does it feel like when you find out you're about to be the first black mayor in Lake Charles history?
I thought it was. I felt the same way I did when President Barack Obama got elected. Not the same scope, because I told when President Barack Obama ran, I was telling my two sons, I said, back when I was in elementary school, if you told somebody I'm gonna be president of the United States, they'd laugh at you. Oh yeah, that's not gonna be a black president of the United States. So when he ran, I remember I told everybody I never got a chance to vote for Barack Obama as president because the first time he ran, I brought my oldest son in the voting booth with me, and he was 12 at the time. I said, "Man, you're about to vote for the first black president of the United States." And I said, "You better tell that to your grandchildren." He said, "Nobody's going to ever believe me." So I pull out my phone. I said, "That's why we're going to videotape it." So he got to vote, pushed the little button, and when he came out, he had this smile on his face. And so when the president ran again for re-election, I brought my second son in, and he did the same thing. So I remember bringing him to the inauguration, and just I wanted to witness the history, but I wanted them to see the power of their vote. And when the Chief Justice said, "Congratulations, Mr. President," and that crowd, that rise, you know, if you ever hear 2 million people cheering at the same time, that's pretty powerful. So when I was when I was elected as mayor, I felt the same thing, not in that scope, but that this is a big deal, you know.